bad throat should be fine over the session.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've got Bryan here, and we're also streaming on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So, in case you're joining us from either of these platforms, quickly introduce yourselves. Bryan always keeps a track of questions and yeah, interaction there as well. So, let us know if you're joining us from YouTube. Hi, Narayan, Deepak, Daniel. Great, 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 great. So before we start, I'd just like to, after your introductions, maybe you can just quickly let us know what your professional background is, right? So there are a couple of questions. Now, which domain or function do you belong to, and what your total work experience is? So if you can answer these questions, and people on LinkedIn and YouTube, please use the live chat to let us know what your professional background is, right? So just answer a couple of questions. What is your current function, and how many years of experience you carry, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just use the poll. Use the poll to let us know your responses. It's just to know you guys a little better, and the conversation today is about the upcoming agile trends, right? So we would like to share with you how it's impacting careers, what certifications and learning path, or certification path you should be pursuing. And towards the end of the session, we're also going to talk about the CSM certification and take you through the enrollment steps, right? So you might have a bunch of questions to ask Bryan. Make sure you use the Q&A box, interact with us in the chat wherever we ask you to. But let's say you have a question, please use the Q&A box, post your question, and we'll get that addressed towards the end of the session. Okay, right? And a couple of free giveaways coming up at the end of the session. So make sure you stay till the end. We'll collect your names for giving you the slide deck and also the webinar certificate. Okay, so the session is going to be about an hour long from now. So just make sure you hang on till the end, gain all the insights you need, and also, of course, give in your entries for webinar certificate and the deck, presentation deck, right? Okay, so I'm just going to end the poll right here and share these results with Bryan. Bryan, there are a couple of questions today.
Okay.
A lot of them are from the tech domain, and majority of them have more than 10 years of experience.
Yeah, look at that.
Some from the oil and gas industry. Okay, some even have 30 years of experience. Okay, that's
Really?
amazing. Yeah, that's actually amazing. Great, great, great. So people on LinkedIn and YouTube, also please introduce yourselves. Let me quickly check for any questions we have. Yeah. All right. Just make sure you add them on the Q&A box. Hi, Nikhil, and everyone else who's joining in. Great. So now that we know what we're going to learn, let me introduce Simplilearn to you. A lot of you may be first timers to webinars, but some of you may be, long-term fans of Bryan. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, come on. We're a team.
Yes. Oh, okay. Thanks. But yeah, you might have seen Bryan earlier in in our sessions. But let me just quickly introduce Simplilearn to you. So what we do is we offer skills in various domains, technical skills, whether they are agile and Scrum skills, whether they are project management skills. So we've got courses and certifications in all of these domains that you see in partnership with leading universities and organizations, right? So we've got courses in partnership with Purdue, in partnership with Virginia Tech, with UMass Amherst. We've also got courses in partnership with Michigan Pro Engineering. So you can check out simplylearn.com to understand our portfolio of courses. And let's say you're interested in any of these, do drop your entry and someone will reach out to you. A learning advisor will reach out to you, right? But today, the focus is the CSM certification in partnership with Scrum Alliance. So we'll talk about how this course is structured, how it can really help set the foundation, and also what the enrollment steps are, right? So welcome everyone else who's just joined in. I'm just going to also quickly introduce Bryan. Bryan has got more than 25 years of experience in agile management, project management, program management. So he's a certified PMP, he's a certified PMIACP, he's got a bunch of other certifications. I mean, you should check his LinkedIn profile out. Yeah. He's also an agile coach, which is why we have him here to explain the trends, the upcoming trends in the field of agile, right? So, welcome, Bryan. I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Aparna. And I never know what to add after you do
Yeah.
my introduction because it always feels so glowing. But yeah, I do have a lot of background in this domain, Agile specifically, but a lot of times in larger organizations in particular, they have a fair amount of interest in understanding how can we take agile practices and some of these behaviors we're interested in and then apply them into more of our project management delivery structures. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of blending that goes on. So I spend lots of time working with companies, trying to find the right balance between how much agility, how much more structure and project management delivery we want.
Right. So let's quickly look at what agile really is, maybe before we proceed ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. So let's understand
Hmm.
what is Agile. Um, so yeah, a few things about it. One is you can see here, it says it's a set of principles and practices that are designed to improve product development. So the whole emphasis here is how do we take products that our customers want and need? How do we enhance them? How do we add additional features to make them more compelling? So the intent is to be flexible because one of the things that we've probably all learned is that change is continuous and
Yeah.
inevitable. So we want to be responsive to that. We want to emphasize collaboration because at the end of the day, it's about the people doing the work. So let's find ways to bring them together, encourage them to interact, collaborate, and then find ways to continuously improve, find ways in which we're understanding what is the most effective way to deliver value to those customers.
Right.
Now,
Right.
the roots of this part of it actually started back in the software
Yeah.
development. Yeah, and I think we'll probably spend a little bit of time on sort of that because that was sort of its roots. Really did emphasize, hey, when we're dealing with software, it creates some different ways in which we can create this value. So if you're thinking about building a great big, commercial structure, maybe a building, a high-rise office building or warehouse, that follows very traditional processes, right? You have to sort of figure out how big it's going to be. You maybe dig out a foundation, you pour some concrete, you build up a framework. So that process, frankly, has been around ever since the pyramids in Egypt. Very standard, very well understood. But when we're dealing with software, we actually have some more flexibility, right? Because we're dealing with zeros and ones. We can make those changes very easily, very quickly. We can sometimes build things without really even knowing what our future state will look like. So we can make those adjustments. Very hard to add, another 10 stories to your high-rise building after you've built it. But in software development, very easy to add more features and enhancements to an existing piece of software, relatively speaking. So this is sort of where this awareness began to emerge that like, hey, there's probably a different way in which we can organize and deliver value. So it started with software development, but rapidly it became clear that, hey, these ideas could be extended to all sorts of other areas, including marketing and HR and operations, et cetera. So we'll talk more about that as we progress.
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted. So why has it become more relevant now? Why are people talking about agile more now than ever before?
Yeah, so I think the big driver, and you can see the one data point, 97% of all organizations practicing some form of agile. And the reason, well, it's pretty simple. We live in a very dynamic, very fluid, global market, and organizations have to be responsive to that. So agile gives them a mechanism in which they can respond to change. And boy, you don't have to go a week without discovering, yeah, there's big changes occurring all the time. So organizations need that flexibility to be responsive. That's sort of the biggest driver there. The second is there was actually some very valuable learnings with the whole COVID pandemic situation, and possibly even more impactful is a shift to remote work. So Agile has been very effective to organizations both responding to those large changes. Maybe we're talking COVID, maybe a couple months now, we're talking about tariffs, but these are large changes that occur that all organizations have to find a way to figure out and respond to. Agile helped most of those organizations be responsive the last time we saw a big disruption and continue to be helpful when responding to remote work demands. And then finally, there's a lot of interest in the AI topic. Increasingly, organizations are looking at AI and trying to find out how can we leverage AI and its tools more effectively. Agile is actually a really good means by which you can get the value from AI and get that very quickly and adapt and adopt. So lots of big drivers around Agile. You're probably not going to find many job applications these days that don't find some reference to your background in Agile. Most organizations can understand what have you done with Agile techniques, what are you familiar with. So I think this is really going to be important foundational skill sets for people to have.
Right. Right. I think we'll talk about AI in a while, but also apart from say, AI empowered agiles, what else is really new or what is coming up?
Yeah, that's great. We can see kind of four broad topics we'll spend a little time on. This idea of shifting from project to product, the idea of scaling agile. Of course, we need to talk about AI and how it's going to enhance agility, and then just how agile is expanding across organizational enterprises. So all four of these are topics that are affecting Agile and really continue, I think, to emphasize how valuable Agile skills are going to be, not just now, but in the future. So the first one, should we dig into the couple of these and talk about what they represent? So the first is this idea of project to product. So I'm guessing, given the fact that a lot of people on the call have 10 plus years of experience, they're all going to have a fair amount of familiarity with this concept of a project. What is a project? Well, it is a temporary endeavor. It's got a defined start and finish. It's going to focus on delivering something of value, some enhancements, something that's going to offer value to customers. And when it's done, it's complete. We wrap it up and we move on to the next project. But increasingly, organizations are recognizing that actually what they provide instead of projects are products that their customers can use. So we want to understand what are these products that customers are buying from us as an organization? Who are those customers? What do those customers need? And recognize that these products are very, very long-lived. So we're going to continually be finding ways to enhance them, to add additional features, just add more value to the customers that use them. So projects kind of put some constraints on things, right? They talk about, how much is it going to cost? How long will it take? What's the scope of the work? Where products focus a little bit more on what's the most important thing to do now to give value to our customers. And instead of kind of pulling teams together for the life cycle of a project, and then when the project's done, these teams disappear. With products, we create high-performing teams and they're long-lived, they're persistent, they continue to work as a high-performing team. So projects kind of disband the teams once they hit that high-performing moment, and then products instead keep those high-performing teams and just focus on continually adding value. So
Right.
that's sort
Right.
of the big message here. It's all about continuously delivering value. We want to find a way in which we create flow. What we want to shift away from is if you're kind of a project-oriented person, you're probably familiar with saying, hey, in 6 months or a year, we're going to deliver some big solution. And the product focus would be, hey, I'm going to just be delivering value continuously. You're not going to have to wait that long to get that value unlocked. So we'll dig into this a little bit further, but some classic processes and frameworks that you probably heard a little bit about. Scrum is probably the biggest one that we see in the market. And the CSM talks specifically to Scrum as a certified Scrum Master. But concepts like lean portfolio management, We'll hear a little bit more about SAFe, that's the Scaled Agile Framework, and Kanban, which are all very product-centric delivery methods. Now, for many organizations, though, this is a big shift, right? They're kind of organized to deliver projects, and oftentimes their organizational structures are centered around functions. So you have maybe an accounting and a marketing and you got business analysts and testers and developers. They're all in separate functions. So there's a bit of a shift here because instead of thinking of organizations as these little discrete specialized units, we're going to find ways to kind of blend those together so we have these well-rounded, high-performing teams that have all the skills they need to deliver something of value. So that's a big shift. So if you are interested in this space, one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of demand for certified Scrum Masters in particular is because they're often going to act as that change agent. They're going to help the organization make those shifts. That's why that role is in such high demand right now.
Yeah, I think agile at scale. So how's that different from the other point that you
Yeah,
mentioned?
just yeah, what's agile scale compared to just agile? Yeah, that's a great question. So remember a lot of what agile sort of has its roots in was very team centric. So it was here's a set of practices that are going to enable a small team to deliver something of value. And that works really well, if you're a Silicon Valley startup and you've got your new app that you're going to put on the app store. You get a small team, you're focused on just that one single product. But the question that emerges is, okay, well, how do we do that when we're maybe a much larger organization? Maybe we've got lots of teams. We might even, in fact, have thousands, tens of thousands of employees. I was doing some work over Home Depot, 500,000 employees in that organization. So now some new questions emerge about how do we get all these small, independent, high-performing teams working together to deliver something that's even larger and going to add even more value to our customers or to our organization. So this is this whole idea of agile scale. So this set of concepts says, okay, we're going to take a lot of the principles that we know work really effectively at the team level, find ways in which we can scale that up across an enterprise, and look for ways in which we can help teams work together across, their different areas that they're focusing on so we can speed up delivery. A big challenge that often organizations run into is they might have a team, working really hard, getting something done, but there's a dependency on another team, and that other team maybe didn't have awareness of the priority of this, or there hadn't been enough collaboration, communication between the teams. So there's delays that emerge, and anytime you see delay, think of that as waste. No one wants to wait, right? So waiting is essentially waste. So what these agile scaling frameworks really focus on is how do we align work across these teams to speed up delivery. Now, there's a
Mm.
couple frameworks that have sort of emerged. The big one is the Scaled Agile Framework. That's probably, think of the 800-pound gorilla as the biggest one in the industry here. Most organizations have spent time that are interested in this, looking at SAFe. But there's others. Large scale Scrum, or less as it's referred to, is getting a lot of attention. The Spotify model. Anyone that uses Spotify, they've done some very interesting work in how to kind of organize teams, deliver value quickly and early, and scaling that across their enterprise. And the big questions that emerge from this is like, so how do we do that? How do we coordinate across teams? And often we need to kind of think now, if we think of a team, a Scrum team, they're generally working in a sprint, which is often 2 weeks in duration. When we start thinking about multiple teams working on larger features and enhancements, we need to perhaps start thinking about quarters. What are we going to get done in the next 3 months? We need enough time for these teams to work together. So maybe we're going to kind of think differently about that time span in terms of when are we going to deliver larger pieces of functionality. So there's a lot of work that goes into figuring that out because it's a big shift for many organizations. Then other questions emerge, like how do we maintain consistency? If we've got all these small independent teams working independently, how do we ensure that they're doing things in a very similar, consistent fashion? And that could be how are we marketing, our branding, to how are we
Mm.
ensuring that our network security is being maintained? And then finally, how do we ensure that leadership is engaged? Because at the end of the day, don't have leadership really plugged into this, they're going to go back to some of their old behaviors they're familiar with, and that can make it really challenging to get the benefits from these agile practices.
Right, right. So a couple of questions that I had, right? So how does one really overcome these challenges? Let's say shifting to a product-based team, right? So that's a mindset shift, or this is a
Right.
genuine challenge. I mean, maintaining consistency at scale. I'm sure a lot of people who lead teams, who are probably in leadership roles, probably agree with this. I'm sure you might have seen this as well. So how does one really navigate these situations if they have to
Yeah,
implement agile at
great.
scale?
Yeah, for sure. That great question. I think both these topics sort of emphasize a few things. One is you do need a foundation in which, you've got a common sort of set of practices and terms that people are familiar with. So I think again, this is a big reason many organizations are pivoting to Scrum as a way in which they can organize teams. And part of the reason for that, if you think of it, if you're a really large company and you say, gosh, this all sounds great, how do I do it? It can feel a little overwhelming if someone gives you like a big stack of paper and says, okay, well, read all this material and then
Mm.
train everyone in your organization. So what makes Scrum pretty interesting is if you go to scrumguide.org, you
Mm-hmm.
can see the Scrum Guide, which is open. It's free, everyone can use it, but it's only 13 pages. So that's pretty lightweight, pretty consumable. It gives you sort of a nice sort of structure framework in which you can apply these techniques. So many organizations said, yep, that makes a lot of sense, which is why many organizations want certified Scrum Masters. They're saying, hey, we need people who know how to do this. This is pretty
Mm.
lightweight. We can scale it quickly across the organization, get everyone kind of using some similar practices. And then for the scaling, yeah, you're exactly right. One of the biggest challenges scaling often runs into is getting leadership buy-in and involvement. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's because, leaders sort of look at these problems a little bit differently. They kind of say, well, oh, Agile's for teams, just do your little Agile stuff. It's fine. I've got big leader stuff I need to think about. And what we want to shift that thinking is actually we need the vision that leaders are sort of articulating. We need teams to understand that. We need leaders to be connected to their teams. We need leaders to give guidance on whether teams are kind of making the right moves. Are they following a path that's going to unlock the value that leaders are sort of emphasizing and communicating back to their stakeholders? So we got to find ways to kind of bring people together a little more actively. And that's exactly why Agile's so popular as well, because it really emphasizes interaction, coordination, collaboration.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. Another question just related to what you just said, why Scrum Masters are needed, right? We'll talk about that maybe when we, in detail, maybe when we talk about the career paths, but how is the Scrum methodology sitting, or in this context of Agile, how is Scrum methodology relevant, maybe for someone who's a beginner? You could just explain how Scrum is relevant here.
Sure, sure. Yeah, one of the nice
Yeah.
things about Scrum is it's very accessible. So I think if we were spending some time digging into it, a lot of what people would hear, they'd say, "Yeah, that just makes common sense." So as an example,
Hmm. Hmm.
we have this team, and the team is stable, and it's got a set of cross-functional skills they can draw upon. And I think most of us would say, "Yeah, that makes perfect sense." Of course, it's like a sports team,
Yeah.
right? Following sports, they've got forwards, they've got defenders, they might have a goalie, wingers, things like that. So a high performing team has very similar structures. We want to have a good collection of skills. The team then looks at a backlog of work. What's a backlog of work? Well, it's just all the things that need to get done. And we
Hmm.
prioritize that. Put the most important things at the top. And those are the things we want to start on because those are the things that add the most value. And again, most people would say, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Of course. What a logical way to approach this. Other thing we emphasize in Scrum is we say we let the team decide how much work they can get completed in a time
Hmm.
boxed period called a sprint. So instead of someone telling you, Pardo, you need to get this done by the end of the day, we reverse the question and say, how long will you need to get this done? And then you get a
Hmm.
chance to say, oh, that's probably going to take me a day and a half or whatever. So we make sure the person doing the work has a voice in communicating their commitment to getting that work done. So again,
Right.
there's much more to this, but those are some light examples of how Scrum in particular and Agile in general become really impactful to organizations that are just frankly trying to get work done.
Hmm. 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 So a lot of questions related to career paths. I think we'll quickly just come to these questions in a while. But yeah, the big point about how AI is changing up things. How is AI really changing up things in Agile? Maybe you could share your thoughts and maybe some anecdotes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, AI is sort of dominating the conversation right now. We're seeing lots of exciting things that are emerging, and everything's kind of got a tag of AI associated with it now. You really can't go anywhere without seeing something about AI. So, and I think it's a very exciting time. Now, this is a big disruption. So, what that really means is we don't fully understand all the impacts that we anticipate AI is going to have, and we're learning a lot about it as we progress. But what we do know is that for a lot of the work that teams are doing, we can see how AI is going to enhance that work, and Agile is no different. So, a couple things. One is AI is going to be very valuable to help provide these data-driven insights. So, AI is quite good at looking at large data sets and providing some insights. It's not just numeric. It could just be, one thing that I've been using AI for, which has been remarkably valuable, is for enhancements and product features. We just put all that information into an LLM, a large language model, and it can then create things like glossaries of terms, because that's often a struggle for people as they're ramping up into a new enhancement or feature. They're trying to figure out like, what do all these terms mean? So AI can be really
Mm,
powerful, take a lot of that raw data and then give you a nice structured, concise glossary. It can be very helpful when you're trying to understand, well, here's all these things we want to do. We've written it all out, but what kind of, how would we break that work into small pieces that a team can focus on and deliver value around? Again, AI is going to be really great for that. I found it very powerful recently working with a team. It was a new team forming in a kind of rapid growth organization that I'm helping out. And they struggled with the fact like, gosh, it's going to take us so long just to write test cases for all this work. So we just asked our AI tool to structure all the requirements into test cases, and it did a very
mm,
beautiful job of just sort of structuring it, putting columns and checks and things like that. So lots of ways in which you can harness the power of AI. Now, one thing I will share though, and this is where I think Agile fits very nicely with AI, because what AI doesn't do a good job, right? It doesn't really bring people together and create a sense of
yeah.
team identity and communicate clarity. And this is what certified Scrum Masters are very good at, bringing people together and
Mm,
finding ways in which they can collaborate, interact, kind of ask those questions, hey, how was your day? How was your weekend? Kind of other activities you like to do. So that brings people together. And again, we can't lose sight at the end of the day, it's about the people. People are what get things done. So I think we're going to see AI be a very strong sort of companion tool. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yes, there will be some displacement. There's no question AI is going to be able to replace some types of roles and the tasks that those roles were performing. But I think it's going to create space for some of these agile practices to really emerge and get full benefit from what the behaviors introduce. And I think you're going to see agile just sort of really being the only way in which teams are going to be working together in the next, 2, 3 years going forward.
wow. Interesting, interesting. It's not going to replace Scrum Masters or anybody in the agile in an agile role for sure, because it's going to help you do your job better, just like what
Right.
Brian said now. Yeah. So you did mention this in the beginning of the session that so agile is not limited to just the tech domains or the tech roles. So if you could share examples of how this is expanding to non-tech areas, yeah, maybe just a couple of examples, say in marketing or HR.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the things that was learned relatively early on with a lot of these agile practices is although they came from the software development and sort of technical domains, they extended very easily to all other parts of the organization. In fact, that's definitely what we're seeing now. Many sort of Scrum Masters and agile teams are forming in areas that are not in the technology IT space. Instead, you're seeing them in marketing and human resources, finance. So why is that? Well, because those areas also have teams and they're looking for
Hmm.
ways in which they can create high performing team behaviors. And a lot of the practices that Agile represents are actually really effective just for teams in general. In fact, I was working with a large organization. It was, I see we had some oil and gas experience here. So this is a very large oil and gas company. They have these oil
Hmm.
rigs out at, Gulf of Mexico, and they fly, people out to work on these rigs for periods of time. But what they recognize is like, hey, these people are doing the same general kind of work that our IT and software development teams are doing. In other words, they get together every day and they check in, okay, what is the list to prioritize things that need attention? Now, on an oil rig, it's, fixing things and checking the safety of things and managing the operations of the rig. But that's a task list, things that need to get done. And what they want to do is find ways to kind of collaborate as a team. So they need to kind of all be aware who's doing what and sometimes what tools are they using. So one person could be aware where that set of tools is and wait for another person to finish it before they start using it. They also want to continuously improve. So one of the things that Agile emphasizes is this idea of a retrospective, a opportunity to kind of ask, how are things going? And are we satisfied with how things are going? And what kind of changes can we make to make things even better? So same thing on these oil rigs. So these engineers get together every day and they check in like, hey, is there a better way to do this? What improvements do we see? So these practices work really, really well, even if you're not touching software technology at all. It could be in marketing, thinking of a new campaign you're trying to release. Could it be human resources, where you maybe releasing a new incentive compensation plan across the organization? Finance, where you're trying to find ways in which you kind of, improve how you're managing things like your invoices and what have you. So all these techniques fit very, very well in these other parts of the organization. And you also get another benefit as the whole enterprise makes this shift. Well, now everyone's working together in the same way. And that's actually also really powerful as well. So you see many, many organizations saying, hey, we're going agile across the board. I think if we had this conversation 10 years ago, well, probably a lot of the people on the call and our conversation focus a lot on the technology, the IT space, but now it's really broadened since then.
Nice. These are really interesting trends that are coming up, changes or shifts that are coming up. But let's also maybe understand how these really impact or influence careers. I know a lot of you, some of you already have questions as to what roles it's going to displace. So yeah, maybe we'll first understand how these trends are shaping careers really. So maybe if you could just highlight some changes, or sorry, yeah, some kind of career paths that are getting influenced, or what kind of changes is it really bringing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as mentioned, I think there's a lot of interest and even demand with industry to find people that are adaptable and flexible and quote unquote agile. So it shouldn't surprise you see that people with these certified professionals at least have 20 to 35% more income on average. The You can see some of the targets there. And then someone did bring up an interesting question. Now, when we start having this conversation around Agile, there's different roles. So we've talked about the Scrum Master. What is a Scrum Master? Well, that is a role within Scrum. Surprisingly, right? Scrum Master. So, of course, could be associated with Scrum. There's only three roles in Scrum. One is the Scrum Master. The other is a product owner. Product owner is responsible for that backlog of work that needs to get done. And then the team, that's the people actually doing the work. So, now you might see some terms like an agile coach. Okay, that's kind of like a Scrum Master, but the Scrum Master sort of expanded some of their support across multiple teams. Now they're shifting into kind of a coaching mode. Okay, so that might be something you're going to see organizations looking for. It might be something you're interested in kind of pursuing. You could become a product owner. Lots of different paths emerge when you get these agile certifications. And I think
Mm,
that's part that many people find kind of exciting about this is you get this first step into the agile domain with your initial certification, and then it opens up opportunities that you've got throughout the organization. And ultimately, there's these leadership opportunities start to emerge because leaders, by definition, have to be pretty responsive, very agile. So these are skills that strong leaders pull on quite a bit. And then because a lot of these ideas are sort of permeating around the world, it doesn't matter if you're in the US or Europe or Asia, India, wherever it might be, there's a lot of global mobility. All organizations are interested in these skills. So as a
Mm.
consequence, you have a lot of mobility that emerges as a result.
Nice. Interesting. So we just take some questions, Brian, because we have a lot of questions around these points actually.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let me see. Okay, let's just start with the most relevant ones. So Ashima has a question for those starting out on their careers and have some experience in consulting and project management, and they wish to go ahead in the project management fields. What pathway would you suggest in terms of certifications?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I know we've got a number of people that have a fair amount of experience on the call. So, one of the things that makes the CSM in particular
Hmm.
kind of interesting for people is it's pretty accessible. So you don't need to have a lot of prerequisites. Yeah, you're going to find that you don't need to invest a lot of time preparing and studying for the exam. And it gets you certification, which is great. You can put it on your resume, put it in your LinkedIn profile. You're already demonstrating you've got some of these skills. And then you can often just apply the skills almost immediately. So you're going to learn some things that you say, hey, I can start that tomorrow with my team. So I think for many people, if you've not taken that step, the CSM is a great starting point. And from that, you can start,
Mm.
out the rest of your educational and career path directions.
Right, right. So let's say someone is wanting to operate at agile at scale in a scale situation, scaled agile situation. So what kind of certification should one do in that case? Will that be the safe certifications then, or
Yes.
yeah?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, that's a great question too. So again, I think of the CSM as sort of your gateway certification. That's kind of
mm,
a
mm,
foundation because
mm,
you have the understanding of what Agile is before you can start scaling it. And then once you get to a point where you say, hey, there's some opportunity to start thinking about how do we work across different teams? How do we think about maybe a quarterly view of what we're going to deliver? That's when frameworks like the Scaled Agile framework are really going to be important. And so, yeah, absolutely. Now, SAFE has a very rich number of certifications and paths you can follow, all sort of different directions. You can be sort of Scrum Master to release train engineer, it can be portfolio management, it could be architecture, DevOps oriented. So lots of really interesting opportunities that start emerge when you start thinking about how do we scale this across larger enterprises.
got it, got it. So you also mentioned, Brian, that while we were talking about AI, so a learner is, I think, worried a bit. What roles do you really see AI replacing again in the context of agile? So what do you see being becoming redundant versus something that's emerging or evolving?
Yeah, I mean, speaking, kind of at least from my vantage point, that what I've seen, a lot of times I spend a great deal of energy working with organizations, helping them writing requirements. And that's usually
Hmm.
in the form of a user story and kind of making sure we've got a well-described user story that articulates the value, who it's for, what the acceptance criteria are. And that can oftentimes take a fair amount of work, to kind of get that right. Well, these AI tools do it effortlessly for you. So I think you're
Hmm.
going to rapidly find a role, particularly like a business analyst, is going to shift. I don't think we're going to see roles like business analysts get as much attention. And I think organizations are just going to consider that a skill that we're going to
Hmm.
have as part of maybe, a delivery team. So I think you're going to see AI really being helpful, taking, frankly, a lot of that was sort of the administrative overhead of structuring our work in a way that teams can understand and they can pull into their delivery life cycle. So I think you're
Right.
absolutely going to see that. I think increasingly too, and if people aren't using it, I'm sure a large number of people are using it, but I'm guessing in a few years everyone will be using it, which is just even sessions like this, using AI to kind of synthesize. Here are the important messages. Here are the
Hmm.
follow-up tasks that need to get performed. Here are the pieces of information that are really relevant. So AI does a very good job of sort of synthesizing that. And if you think in the past, that would be something often a person would finish a meeting and then they'd write up their little meeting notes and think about that. And that could sometimes take a whole day. Now that's just going to be part and parcel, just conducting a meeting.
Got it. Got it. Another question, actually the same person has asked a couple of questions. I think he wants to get into program management,
Hmm.
and he's from the non-tech domain. So he wants to also know what kind of probably a learning path sort of a thing. What does he need to have to get into program management? And the same person is kind of asking about agile project management as well. So you mentioned tools, yeah, Jira and Trello and all of these. So are there tools that someone needs to learn to get into agile project management as well? I think he has questions regarding both these domains.
Yeah, yep, great question. So I think to answer the first one, um, the path to program management. So there are kind of two general schools of thought on the program manager front. So the first is a bit more the conventional program management, which is a program is a collection of several related projects that if we manage together will create even more value than if they're managed individually. It's very much
Right.
sort of the PMI Project Management Institute definition. Definitely a place for those. Generally speaking, these are very large initiatives. These are the kinds
Mm.
of initiatives that organizations need to ensure are delivered and executed very well, because oftentimes they represent a very significant investment in terms of money and time of people. So they really want to make sure those are being well managed. So now, organizations aren't just going to give the keys to those kind of implementations to people that don't have a lot of background and experience. So generally expect that if you want to get into that program management space, you're going to need at least 10 plus years of pretty practical experience to get those opportunities. Now,
Mm.
another path that has definitely begun to emerge as we make this shift into more product-centered delivery is this idea of a lean portfolio management. So that has some of the same attributes that we might expect to see when we look at the PMI view of a program management process. But instead, with lean portfolio management, it really focuses on how do we take ideas, funnel them down to the point they're well formed, and they get teams who have capacity to pull that work, get that work completed, and then they pull the next piece of prioritized work. So that lean portfolio management space is a very high demand area. Lots of organizations recognizing this is a really efficient way to deliver and unlock value early, but it pulls on a different set of skills. So whereas a program manager is sort of thinking about, bringing people together for a discrete period of time to get some work done, a portfolio-oriented program manager is going to instead focus on how to create these stable, high-performing teams, get them working and collaborating effectively so they can pull work continuously and deliver that work as quickly as possible. So two
Mm.
different mindsets here. I think both those paths are probably could be pretty interesting. Both are going to require a fair amount of experience. Um,
Got it.
yeah, and then
Got
in
it.
tooling wise, the only thing I would offer around tooling, gosh, if you do a Google search for, Agile project management tools, you'll probably get dozens and dozens of results. There's lots of products out there. Jira is probably the most, predominant that we see in the
Yeah.
industry, but other alternatives are Azure DevOps. So it's hard to kind of say what tool is the best one. But if you can
Mm.
get some exposure to Jira, hey, that's going to be valuable. Remember, all these tools represent these ideas that you find in Agile.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Trello and Jira, yeah, they look a little bit different, but generally speaking, they kind of behave the same way. We do have tools like Slack, and probably a lot of people use Teams, for communication, Confluence documentation. These are all good, these are great products. If you can spend some time learning them, fantastic. It's just going to make it even easier for you to get those opportunities.
Great. I think that your insights are just, they're just really packed with interesting information. So there's one question from someone on from LinkedIn. So what's your insight about adding AI to Agile? And yeah, I think he already shared that, Kannan. So his next question is, what would be the first steps to achieve this? I'm assuming he's asking about how he can actually leverage AI and upscale and become relevant. I think that's his question, which again I
Yeah.
think you just answered. Probably learning some of these tools, understanding how you can leverage AI in any of the practices that you have, any of these workflows or tasks that you have. I think that's your first step, I guess. So just a follow-up question to lean portfolio management, Brian. So how would someone learn that? Is there a certification again, or are there courses that you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. When we starting into sort of lean portfolio management, there's probably in that case, you probably will have a few prerequisites. A good one, of course, be some certification in Scrum because um, LPM and Scaled Agile Framework rely a fair amount on those foundations like the Agile principles and values, the Scrum practices. Kanban becomes important. So you're probably going to want to spend some time getting those skills and ensuring that you kind of have a good foundation and then take that next step into LPM. There are a number of LPM certifications available that you can explore. And some are through the Scaled Agile framework, but they're not the only ones. There's others that offer similar training, and so yeah, take a look at those. Just make sure my general guidance is ensure that whoever's providing it is a credible uh, training provider, something like Simplilearn that's well recognized, doing it a long time, has some of the things we look for, like hey, we've got sort of a self-managed learning process I can follow, maybe mobile accessibility. Those are things that are really important. And then ensure that the people teaching it are also,
Yeah.
experienced and good instructors.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think we'll talk about how Simplilearn's the CSM certification is different, how it really helps you. But just one more question before we talk about the CSM certification here is, so what would you suggest for someone asking about PMI ACP or Prince 2? How are these relevant? Should someone really pursue them? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's a question that often comes up once people get some exposure to the
Yeah,
different
yeah,
certifications, and it can be a
yeah,
little
yeah.
cloudy at times, figuring out, which one is the best one. So, a
Mm.
few simple things that can help with. First off, the CSM is on just Scrum. I don't
Yeah.
want to say exclusively Scrum, but its primary emphasis is helping ensure that people understand what the Scrum set of practices are, what the framework is, and then you can become a certified Scrum Master. So a lot of focus on Scrum. The PMI ACP, which is an Project Management Institute Agile Certified Professional, that takes a little broader view. It says, yep, Scrum is important. We're going to make sure that you've got, a good understanding of what Scrum is. But in addition, we're going to spend time on ideas like Kanban. We're going to spend times on other techniques like extreme programming, where you introduce ideas like user stories and story points and metrics like velocity.
Yeah.
So the ACP kind of takes a little broader view. Okay, so it doesn't go as deep into the Scrum Master space. It kind of recognizes, hey, actually most agile environments, bring together a collection of different techniques. So let's get exposure to that. Now, the trade-off with the ACP is it's a more demanding exam, and you also have some prerequisites. You're going to have to demonstrate that you've been, applying some of these techniques. You've been working in an agile environment. You've got some project background, so it can be a little harder for people. Who don't have all the necessary prerequisites to get that PMI ACP certification. And then after that, there are lots of other certifications that you can see. Some people might say, hey, maybe I want to be more of a product owner. But the
Mm.
CSM is still a good starting point because you need to understand the Scrum practices to be an effective product owner or product manager. And then we've got some scaling paths that become available as well if you want to look at the Scaled Agile framework or less or any other certification paths out there.
Yes, just to summarize, because I know these questions will keep coming, and then, Brian will still patiently answer them with the same energy. But just to like summarize, CSM is like the starting point, and then, if you would want to pursue a product owner's role, then a CSPO comes into picture. But let's say you are looking, yeah. So I think I forgot. Yeah. So some question about Prince 2 was also there. So if you could also add that, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Prince 2, think of Prince 2 as sort of a very similar to the Project Management Institute PMP, the Project Management Professional Certification. So Prince 2 is sort of its own framework, has some agile attributes, but really is focused a bit more on how do we deliver projects effectively and successfully. Where Prince really gets its traction is in Europe. So if you happen to be joining us from Europe, you might hear Prince 2 used a lot more there. It doesn't have generally as much presence here in the US and certainly sort of the Asia Pac area. But it doesn't mean it doesn't have valuable ideas. And if you're working in an organization that's using Prince, yeah, sure, you should get your Prince certification.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think let's now talk about the CSM certification as well, because Bryan has to drop off another 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll just
Yeah,
quickly
look at that.
understand. Yeah, so we'll just quickly understand how the CSM certification course is built. Maybe Bryan, you have been a trainer with us as well, so you could just explain how the curriculum is built, and let the learners understand the course.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to start with the foundation. And for Agile in particular, that's understanding the Agile Manifesto. You can actually go see the Agile Manifesto in the form in which it was originally created just by going to agilemanifesto.org. It's going to introduce you to the 4 values, the 12 principles. And these are essentially the guides for anything related to Agile. So it doesn't matter if it's Scrum, Kanban, Safe, LESS, XP. These are sort of the common references for all things Agile. So we want to make sure everyone starts with that. Then we'll give a similar perspective on Scrum. Scrum has its own pillars that it references to kind of bring together its set of practices. And then we'll start digging into what Scrum really means. That will get us exposed to the roles that I mentioned, the Scrum events, and then some of the artifacts, things like the backlog that we're going to produce. So all that's going to let you leave the session with not just a really comprehensive understanding of what Scrum is all about, but the ability to start applying these techniques immediately. And that's pretty exciting too. A lot of times, when I teach PMP courses, a lot of people say, well, these are great ideas. It's going to take a long time before our organization is ready to really embrace them. You finish CSM class, and believe me, the very next day you can start applying some of these techniques and seeing the benefits.
Right. Got it. Got it. So along with this curriculum, you also have access to a self-paced curriculum, which is available to you lifelong. So you can access video and PDF content on your learning platform. And you also have a bunch of free courses on Agile and Scrum, on lean management, and also, of course, AI. And yeah, so you can check this course out. I'm just going to share the link to the course here on the chat for you to look at. Yeah, I'm also just closing the chat box for a while so that you don't miss the link. So you can check out the learning path for the CSM certification training. And what else happens in this course is that you have access to live classes, and these classes happen over a weekend. So it's really easy for you to choose whatever cohort is convenient. And these classes are conducted by certified Scrum trainers. Remember what Bryan said, so you also need to see who your trainers are, who your provider is. So Simplilearn is a training partner of Scrum Alliance, and we've got certified Scrum trainers who take these cohorts, right? So let me just show you how you can verify this. Firstly, yeah, you can check this that we've have this course in partnership with Scrum Alliance. And secondly, when you check these course cohorts, you will be able to find who your trainers are going to be as well. Right? Let me just help you understand. So remember that I said you could take this course over a weekend. This is what I meant. So you can enroll in any of these cohorts, whichever time seems convenient to you. Of course, these are time zones, US time zones, but let's say you are in India, you would want to see courses or cohorts in Indian time zones. You can still do that by clicking on the link that I shared, right? So I remember Bryan did say what career paths we open you up to, so you can, of course, pursue the Scrum Master's role, but also let's say you would want to, take up a product owner's role. You can do that by getting certified as a CSPO, and let's say you can also grow to become an agile coach, just like what Bryan is. So this could be your growth path to anyone wondering what you can do after pursuing a CSM, right? So Bryan, if you can just highlight on these other career paths as well. Of course, you did mention again the scaled agile framework as well. What
Mhm.
else can someone really pursue if, after they've done their CSM?
Yeah, so you see one term there, the release train engineer, the RTE. Now
Mhm.
that is a role that is definitely associated with the scaled agile framework. Think of this as sort of the Scrum Master of Scrum Masters. So this person is going to
Mm.
be working with a variety of different teams, working with their Scrum Masters, ensuring that everyone's sort of synchronized and aligned. Of course, you have these agile project managers. Sometimes people feel a little uncomfortable using that term because it kind of suggests a bit of a hybrid. That, are you really agile? Are you really a project manager? Which are you? But in any event, for many organizations, and I mentioned at the start of this, I spent a great deal of time with these organizations, helping understand, yeah, are there ways in which we can blend these practices? Some of the agile practices of sort of self-managed autonomous teams working together against a product backlog, and then some of these questions that leadership often asks about, hey, I have a really important initiative. I want to understand when it's going to be complete, how much it's going to cost, and what am I going to get when it's done. So the Agile project manager space, I would expect you'd see that in generally larger, much larger organizations. Business agility consultant. So think of this as a person who's working with some of these maybe non-technical groups. In fact, we did have a question about like, hey, how do we apply some of these Scrum techniques like planning in our daily Scrum and reviews and retrospectives in non-tech areas? Well, this is where a business agility consultant would help. They would explain, here's the intent. We want to do some lightweight planning at the start of a sprint so we understand what work needs to get completed, why that work is important, and then understand if we can get that work done. So that's where the agility consultant would help. QA analyst. This is another, by the way, interesting area for AI. I think we're going to see AI make very, very deep inroads into the whole QA testing domain. But when we think of testing and quality assurance in general, if you've got an agile team that is working on figuring out, like, yeah, have I really completed the work? Is it satisfying the needs of my customer? A good QA analyst should be asking those questions like, yeah, how can I prove that? What tests can I conduct that prove that we've satisfied these requirements? And then, because a lot of times Agile works on sort of this idea of increments, so we're always building on something that we've completed in the previous sprint. We often need to think about, well, and how do we retest what we finished in the past sprint to make sure it's still working with the new work that we introduced? So, some really interesting topics start to emerge when you think about agile and testing and how do they work together.
Sorry, I was on mute again. Thanks, Brian, for. I have a bad throat today and thought I just mute
No
myself. So,
worries. Yeah.
yeah, right. Thanks, Brian, for highlighting that. And in case you are looking to pursue this particular course, and towards the end, you would receive a certificate that looks like this, and you also get a digital badge along with this certificate from Simplilearn, and of course you get to access live sessions from certified Scrum trainers, like I mentioned. And then you also get to apply the knowledge that you gain through hands on exercises. To apply Scrum techniques that you learn as a part of the course, you get knowledge that you can apply in real time and also, of course, get you ready for the exam. Right. So that's what the course offers. In case you want to take a detailed look at the curriculum and everything else, please take a look at the link that I shared. And like I also mentioned, in case you're looking to take up or join an upcoming cohort, you should be able to find the cohort dates on the course page as well, right? So how can you be a part of this particular cohort? Let me just take you through that. All you have to do is to click on the link that I shared. Make sure you click on enroll now here. And then after that, you can just choose the cohort that is suitable to you and then enroll now and then apply this coupon code, which is happy5. And also make sure you avail this offer, which is $254 for the weekend course. Let's say you are in India, that will cost you about 11,000 rupees. If you can, check this link, you will be able to see that the price is 11,000 rupees, including the discount. And an additional you know coupon that you can apply is the happy 5. So make sure you use this opportunity to become a part of our, if any of our upcoming cohorts actually. And yeah, what else you can do is to drop your interest through the polls. I'm just going to launch a very quick poll here, asking you your interest in the program. Okay, so you can be clicking on a yes or a no. So if you click on a yes, what happens is a learning advisor reaches out to you and asks you about your interest, tells you about these discounts that are available right now, and encourages you to be a part of the cohort. So make sure you ask your questions, whatever questions you have about how these classes are conducted, where they're conducted, um, how you're going to be getting your self-learning, self-paced learning content, all of these questions you can ask the learning advisor, and of course, how you can apply these discounts, whether you can, choose an upcoming cohort. If not this one, maybe if you could choose the next cohort, ask these questions to the learning advisor, right? Some success stories that from our learners. Let me just show you. So if you can again open the course page, you will find that a lot of learners took up this course, went on to choose roles that that brought them immense growth. So you could take a look at these stories as well on the course page. Yeah. Now, if you have questions regarding course enrollment, we can also take that. You can drop them on the Q&A box and let us know. Now, some of you might have this question about why Simplilearn is different. Why not do it from any other training provider? Remember that it's not just about giving you content that will help you clear the CSM exam. It also helps you with access to a bunch of other learning materials that are necessary for you to apply on the job, right? So we make you ready for becoming a Scrum Master and help you apply these learnings immediately after the course is complete, after you get the certification. So we also help you get that edge with these upcoming trends that Bryan mentioned, right? So we've got Gen AI components in all our courses, including the CSM certification. So you should definitely consider this in case you're looking to start your journey here. Yeah. Right. So let me see if there are more questions for Bryan. Bryan, how much time do you have? Because I think we might have one more question from a learner on YouTube. Do you mind answering that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Fire away.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Anderson has a question. He's a digital marketer and he loves the idea of managing the development process of a product. He's getting to learn more about the product manager role, and he wants to start off, in that direction. So, what
Right.
would you recommend to him? Would you recommend the CSM certification, or what? I think he's asking for what certification would you really recommend to someone who's wanting to become a product manager?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do think the starting point should be something like your certified Scrum Master. It's going to give you the foundation around Agile and Scrum. Scrum is sort of the framework that emphasizes this idea of a product owner. So if that's a direction you want to take, start with the CSM. Now, there are lots of good certification paths available for product owners. So in fact, a
Mm,
popular one is what's called the POPM, the POPM, Product Owner Product Manager certification that is offered by the Scaled Agile Framework, SAFe. So that's one to consider. But there's lots of others. So Agile Alliance has some very strong offerings too around this. So you're going to discover, and maybe part of this is a topic we can dig into for another session, is yeah, what paths are available for people that are really interested in that product domain. And by the way, that is also a very highly sought after skill set for many organizations. They are very actively looking for skilled, knowledgeable, experienced product owners.
mm. Right. So I think that gives us an idea about what we can do next as a webinar. But yeah, I think we're pretty much done with questions, and I think almost most of the questions have been answered as well, thanks to your typing speed. Anyway, great. So I think if there's anyone else who's wanting to become a part of our upcoming cohort, you should choose a yes on the poll. And let's say you want to take up any other course as well, not just the CSM certification. Let's say you want to take up CSPO, you want to explore Prince 2, you want to explore the Scaled Agile framework certifications, anything. So you can click on a yes, and the learning advisor will reach out to you, right? So I think with that, Bryan, maybe you might, I think this is, yeah, you might have to drop off now. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it's that
Yeah,
time. I'm
yeah,
gonna have to jump. But this is a great session. Love all the questions. Oh my gosh, pardon, man, we've got a lot of good questions this time.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
great. Thank you, everyone, being so engaged and involved. I did pop my LinkedIn link in one of the responses, so you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. And thank you, Aparna, for another great session. Look forward to the next one.
Great. Thanks, Bryan. So I will share your the link to your profile in the chat as well. Might have
Yeah.
got missed. So I might do that towards the end of the session. So yeah, great session as well, Bryan. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. The learners can stay back because I still have a few more things to do. So maybe the learners can stay back and get your questions addressed. See you, Bryan. Bye. Bye. Right. So in case you've answered a yes, please expect a call back from a learning advisor very, very soon. You should be receiving a call, in the next couple of hours. If you are in the US, but let's say you are in India, you should be receiving a call tomorrow, right? So that's how it is. Now I'm just ending this poll right here. And what I'm going to do is launch a poll that asks you your name. So make sure you enter your name on the poll that I've launched. So this particular poll, when you answer this poll, what happens is that you receive the webinar certificate along with the presentation that we did today's PDF of that, along with the recording and the certificate. Yeah, great. Sorry. So the recording and everything else should be reaching you tomorrow. Someone had that question. And let's see. Sailesh, how will it help you in your career as an app developer and a digital marketing specialist? Now, again, you will have to find out specific use cases of how Scrum is really useful in your particular role, how the Agile frameworks are useful in your particular role to understand whether the certification really is a good fit. Right. So maybe you should just do that a little bit of introspection to understand how this is really relevant, and then go ahead and do it. Let's see, again, I think the same answer applies for Amir, I think, who had a question about how this is useful in the oil and gas space. It depends on where or how these agile frameworks or agile methodologies applied on your job, and how this certification will help you in your current role. So think about it that way, and then see if this is relevant. If you want to explore other certifications, of course, you can also do that. So like Bryan mentioned, if you're leaning towards becoming a product owner or a product manager, then CSPO is the right path for you. Let's say you are looking at things at scale, agile at scale. So the scaled agile framework is the right path for you. Okay. So there are a bunch of certifications that can help you, but again, you need to find the right fit based on your career goals and whatever your needs are. Okay, so Sandeep, you're from the customer service domain, and you've completed your Six Sigma Green Belt. You're also pursuing PMP. How can Agile help? So again, sorry. So these are slightly different certifications, a slightly different domain from what we discussed today. So project management is entirely on, completing a set of tasks that are aligned to a business outcome, whereas Agile is more about adapting to change, looking at how things can change, how things can adapt quickly in terms of, again, what the business outcomes are, right? So, or business goals in that sense. So, Scrum is mostly related to Agile in the sense that you are looking at a certain list of tasks and you're grouping a certain list of tasks and doing it in the form of a sprint. So, it's slightly different from a traditional PMP again. So it would change and depend on what your career goals are, which role you are in right now, and how Agile and Scrum are relevant. Right. So you probably should understand that before you make this decision on whether you should really do an Agile certification. Some of you might find the PMP certification more relevant. So let's say you chose a yes on the poll and you change your mind now, you feel that the PMP certification is something that you would choose, then I think you can go ahead and tell your learning advisors that, hey, I did want to become a part of the CSM cohort, but now I think PMP makes more sense. Okay, so which is why I've shared the link to the course page. You can head to any course in the project management or the Agile and Scrum domain, any certification that seems relevant to you, and then choose and drop your details. So let me show you how you can actually do that. So when you head to the course page of the CSM certification training, let's say you enter Agile and Scrum, you can find there are a bunch of other certifications that we offer. So we also offer the CSPO, we offer the Leading Safe training, we also offer the PSPO, we also offer Professional Scrum Master. So there are a bunch of other certifications. And of course, with project management, so we have these certifications as well, right? So you may find anything to be the closest to your career goals and your learning needs. So make sure you choose the right one. And let's say, okay, CSM does not suit me. I want to pursue the CSPO certification. What you do is you click on talk to a learning advisor, okay? And then you enter your details. That's about it. When you do this, a learning advisor will explain you the enrollment steps. Okay, right? So again, Prad, if that's your name. So Agile project management does help in every domain possibly that you can think of, right? The only thing that you need to understand and derive is how relevant it is and what my use case is, and then decide on the right certification to upskill. Okay, right? So I'm just going to open up the chat because I think I'm done sharing all the information that I wanted to. Let's say your question wasn't answered and you want to post that on the chat or the Q&A, you can do that right now. Let's say you have a suggestion to give us for an upcoming webinar, you can also do that right now. So let's say you want us to cover anything else, please make sure you put that on the chat, right? A lot of you guys said that you would want to understand Agile trends, which is why we did this webinar. Okay, so definitely take suggestions from our learners, and we try to incorporate that as webinar ideas. So make sure you give your suggestions as well. And yeah, of course, do enter your name on the poll. In case you haven't done that, only about 10 of you are remaining. So make sure you enter your name, and we will be rolling these certificates out by tomorrow end of day. Okay, along with, of course, the deck that we shared along with the recording and everything. Okay. Okay, amazing to know, Sandeep, that you're already doing the PMP certification. Amir, or whatever your name is, make sure you're clear with your suggestion. So do you want us to cover supply chain certification? Do you want us to talk about supply chain certifications? What is your suggestion? Yeah. People on LinkedIn, Kannan, and everyone else who had questions, make sure you give your suggestions as well. So what would you like us to cover next as a webinar? Or maybe, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to end this poll right here because I see a lot of you have already answered. And yeah, let me just end the poll. And I'm just going to ask you to rate this particular session. Okay, so let us know what you would like us to do better or what you would like us to do next on the poll if you feel awkward to share your inputs here. Thank you, Anthony, for recommending the supply chain management course. Thank you for recommending that. Yeah, so let me actually share the link to the supply chain course. Let's see. Yeah, again, are you talking about? Okay, Anthony, I'm not sure which course you're talking about. So maybe if you can share this for the other learners to understand the context, it'll be great. Okay. Yeah, it. Amazing. Thanks so much for your responses, guys. I'm just going to leave the poll on for another couple of minutes and then we'll end the session right here. Okay. So in case you've got more questions for us, you can reach out on webinars@simplylearn.net. Okay, that's our email ID. About webinars. Of course, if you've got questions about webinars, you can do this. Yeah? Great. Great. So I'm just going to end this poll, guys. Remember that you will receive your certificates and the recording along with this deck in the next 24 hours. In case you are looking to join us for an upcoming webinar, do make sure to check out Simplilearn's free resources section to access any webinar that's coming up. So I'm just going to share the link to this page. Yeah, here you go. So you can check out any other webinars that are coming up and become a part of any such webinars with other such amazing speakers. Thank you so much, guys. It was great hosting you. And also excuse me for my throat. I was not able to speak continuously. It took me a while to frame my thoughts and speak because of my throat. But I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you enjoyed listening to Bryan. I'm looking forward to hosting the next one for you as well. Bye-bye.